Now, this morning we laid the foundation of the talks, a general presentation of how the Buddha talked about things which exist. So whatever exists belongs to one of the three categories of, or in general, two categories: things which don't change moment by moment, and secondly, those which do. And those which do change moment by moment, the three categories of physical things, mental things, and things which are neither physical nor mental. So we talked about those. In your notes, the second page talks a little bit more about mind itself. So as you have already become aware, mind is presented in Buddhism simply as the stream of subjective awareness of things. So our very awareness of colours and shapes, our awareness of sounds, smells, taste, touch, that awareness is mind. So, of course, we are aware of things in dependence upon our sense organs, our nervous system, our brain, the physical side of the body. We cannot, our human mind cannot be aware without the support of the body. But the very awareness, this experience, this subjective experience, that is not physical. That is mind. It's like when we look at the mats, the mats are all blue colour, or some are green colour, but just the visual awareness of blue mats and green mats, that experience is mind. And of course mind, so experience associated with pleasant feelings. We like the colour blue. Actually, it's my favourite colour. We like it, so it appears in a pleasing manner. So there is pleasure in that visual awareness of blue, or there may be displeasure. And then when the information from the senses goes to mental consciousness, that's in our mind the thinking, the knowledge, the emotional side of mind. Joy, unhappiness, love, compassion, anger, jealousy, generosity, the constructive or destructive emotions, they also are mind. Like anger is mind. It is mind in a state of aversion, the mental consciousness. Like you don't have emotions with your senses. Your five senses simply experience things. They do experience pleasure or pain, but there isn't love in the eye consciousness. You may see the person to whom you are most attracted, and they, you feel so good, but that's that sense of love, or from the Buddhist point of view, attachment, is not happening in the eye consciousness. It's in the mental consciousness. So you see the form of the person to whom you're attached, and that information goes to the mental consciousness, and your mental consciousness experiences attachment, longing, desire, and attachment to be with that person, to touch that person, to not be separate from that person. That's all mind, and that's happening in mental consciousness. Okay. So, from the Buddhist point of view, awareness or mind exists, and we will verify that. Yes, I am aware. It exists in dependence upon the body, but it's not the same as the body. It's not created by the brain or created by the nervous system. From the scientific side, we scientists, I call myself a scientist as well as a Buddhist, we scientists cannot accept mind as being something that's not physical. Scientifically, we believe that organisms evolved from primitive creatures to more advanced nervous systems, and mind evolved. Mind is a product of evolution. But it's still the same. It's not different from the brain. It is some aspect of the functioning of the brain. That's what we believe biologically. Buddhism reverses the situation. Buddhism says that evolution is the result of the mind. Mind came first, not second. And so this afternoon we're going to talk about the levels of rebirth. So if our mind is non-physical, it exists in dependence upon the brain, but is not created by the brain. But it exists. Where did it come from? At any moment in time, the present moment of awareness, whether it's sensory or mental, exists. It came into existence as a result of the cessation of the previous moment of mind. And when the present moment of mind awareness stops, it gives rise to the future moment of mind. So there's this stream of consciousness. And a moment by moment, whatever qualities we have, they can be manifest in terms of what we are experiencing at that time, or they can be non-manifest. Like we have a whole lot of knowledge and memories which aren't all manifest at this present moment. We can meet an old friend and we start talking and discussing old times, and memories come up. They are there, but of course they couldn't all be there at the same time. It would be impossible. So as mind goes from one moment to the next, the imprints or the seeds of knowledge, of memories, of emotional ideas and concepts are all carried along at the same time. And they can become manifest under different conditions. You know, I mean, we might have a favourite football team or whatever, and we don't really think about it, but during the day we see the colours of our favourite football team, the uniform, and that brings up all of our attachments and knowledge about the football team. So, anyway, that you get the general idea. Our mind, so where did it come from? It's not created by the nervous system, but it exists. Did our mind come from our parents' mind? If that happened, then each baby would be born with certain qualities of the mother's or father's mind. There'll be some memories, some knowledge. But it's not like that. Each baby has a unique individual mind. They don't have the qualities of their parents' minds. But they do have qualities. And often, I mentioned this the other day, little babies can manifest distinct personality characteristics at a very young age, which we, in retrospect, oh yeah, this child had those same qualities when they were very, very young. And also, they can be little babies can get very angry when things don't go their way, and they can throw tantrums and scream and shout when they don't get what they want. Parents look at each other, where did that come from? Didn't come from me. No, it came from past life. So, mind exists, not created by brain, doesn't come from parents' mind. It has to have come from a previous moment of consciousness. You can't have consciousness just coming from nothing. Nothing comes from nothing, not even the universe, as the scientists believe. Well, they're changing their idea now. They think, oh, maybe there wasn't a big bang. Maybe there was a big crunch. A previous universe collapsed and then... Anyway. Logically, if we see mind as being without physical qualities, but it exists, this actually is a logical argument for rebirth, for reincarnation. Each baby's mind has to be the continuum of a prior mind. And where did that come from? From previous life. So we mentioned here that mind, each individual has his or her own mind stream. No two mind streams can unite, and no single mind stream can divide into two. Yeah.
Sometimes we hear that some Tibetan lamas, they can reincarnate into more than one person. How does that work?
That's true. The question is that we hear about Tibetan lamas, they can manifest in more than one body. Those who have higher realization. I mean, Shakyamuni Buddha manifested and is still manifesting in countless bodies. When we do the visualization of Shakyamuni Buddha and we see the lights radiating, on each beam of light there is a physical emanation going throughout the universe to work for others. So as one approaches Buddhahood and one gains realization, it is possible for the one mind to manifest in several bodies. But still only one mind stream, but the mind does have the power through great compassion to manifest in different bodies. But it's still only one mind stream, different bodies. Like I took refuge with Bero Khyentse Rinpoche in the Kagyu tradition. With the Kalkupa tradition, I think there were 3 or 4 Khyentse Rinpoches. And they're all the same person, actually. Right? But manifesting in different ways. And ultimately, Manjushri manifesting as Khyentse Rinpoche. It's different. So Bero Khyentse Rinpoche was, I don't know, the third. I don't know. So that, I hope that answers that question. All right. So the next 2 pages go on to the realms of rebirth, which are all reflections of mind within samsara. So there's a table there showing the birth states within the wheel of life. There are 3 main realms. The realm, what we call the formless realm, the form realm, and the desire realm. This table is sort of from the highest down. So formless realm, we've all been there. We've been born in all of these different levels many times, mostly in the desire realm. But through the power of concentration, in meditative concentration, to achieve dhyana, the dhyana or the absorption, it means that the meditator temporarily suppresses all desire for sensory pleasure. Pleasure of the eyes, ears, taste, touch, and so on. And at that level of meditative concentration, the meditator sees this as superior. This experience is more pleasant, more peaceful, superior to mundane pleasure. So temporarily there is no desire, no manifest attachment to sensory pleasure. But there is attachment to this level of meditation. And so when a meditator generates that, they generate attachment, they create karma to be reborn at such a level of meditative absorption. So there are more and more powerful. So that would be the first level of the form realm. This is the form realm devas. We call the first concentration. Then the meditator, say as a human, can also gain deeper dhyana or concentration and sees that first level as inferior and this deeper level superior, much more attractive. So they create the karma to be born at the level of the second concentration. Or the human can then go even deeper, see that level not so good, and next depth of meditation even better. And they create the karma to be born at the third concentration, and so on, the fourth concentration. So these are called devas. Deva means bliss being. It's called form realm because they have physical bodies, they can see each other, there are no smells or tastes, but the other senses are functioning. They're all born spontaneously, they're not born from the womb. But during their lives, they do engage in tactile engagement in tactile experiences and visual experiences and auditory experiences. And even though they can even have sexual embrace, they don't conceive children. They're born spontaneously. After they die, after say a human dies, and the karma to be reborn as a first, second, third or fourth level or dhyana of concentration. If that karma ripens, then they spontaneously appear in that level. The formless realm is even more subtle. 4 levels of concentration. Limitless space, limitless consciousness, limitless nothingness. And then the peak of cyclic existence, which is sort of it is a state of non-particular discrimination into this or that. So again, a human meditator can reach any of those 4 absorptions or dhyanas and create the karma to be born there. So they don't have gross bodies at all. Their mind is supported by subtle physical form, or we call wind, or lung in Tibetan. But they don't see each other. Their mind is just single-pointedly experiencing that level of concentration, and it many eons of time, until eventually that karma is expired. And then because the mind carries with it karmic seeds for rebirth at all other levels, each individual being from the formless realm can be born anywhere else in the wheel of life. They can be born back in the form realm or anywhere in the desire realm. So that is a brief description of the first two main realms of existence, the formless realm and the form realm. And the individuals are called devas, or we call them devas. Is that okay? Now, the next is the more interesting one, the desire realm. So, the desire realm is called desire because this refers to the dominant desires in the minds of beings who are born there are for the pleasures of taste and the pleasures of sexual contact. These are the most dominant. There's desires for the other pleasures as well, but these are the two dominant desires. So as you see, the desire realm, there are devas in the desire realm as well, or the desire realm gods. So that the deva is translated as God. That can be a bit controversial. So there are 4 levels who are said to dwell in the sky, and 2 who dwell on the earth, on this earth. They coexist with us in this world, but we don't have the karma to be aware of them. Through meditation, we can become aware of those, that the heaven of 33 and the heaven of the 4 great kings. We can become aware of them through the power of meditation. Similarly, we coexist with the hungry ghosts who share this world, but we only have human karma. We only see a human world. We don't have the clairvoyance to see hungry ghosts, but they are here with us. They don't have the karma to see us. We have to realize that what we take for granted as being the external world, trees, flowers, oceans, etc., is just what we are experiencing. We're experiencing common because we have common human karma. Even with human beings, change the state of mind can change our experience of the world. I mean, if you remember when you were a teenager and you're first in love, attached anyway, and you walk down the street and your mind is thinking about the person you adore and is sort of floating a bit. When the mind is in that sort of happy state, things appear differently. We see the flowers, we see the colours, we hear the birds. Things look nice. We're experiencing them as nice. Then, when the person to whom we are so attached rejects us, we become totally depressed and miserable. We walk along the same street. We don't notice the flowers. We don't hear the birds. Everything looks dark, threatening, awful. Then, when we're not high or low, excited or depressed, we're just average, normal, walk along the same street. It's sort of in the middle. Not too good, not too bad, just average. The street is appearing to us, and people in the street and animals appearing in that way. So this is like an illustration that just in the human mind, when we change the mood, it changes our world. The world we experience. So, what is the street and the things in the street? Is it a really pleasant place? Is it a really unpleasant place? Or is it neutral? What is the real street? there is no real street. The world is dependent upon the mind that perceives it. And this goes for the realms of rebirth in a much greater sense. There is no concrete reality anywhere in the universe that is independent of subjective experience. And subjective experience is the definition of mind. The quantum physicists are just getting onto this, actually, according to the book I'm reading. Okay. So just in brief, this desire realm devas, the sky-dwelling devas, for them, there's no experience of day or night, but in their world, in what they experience, flowers do open and close, and birds sing and stop singing. But they have no sun or moon. But they can see each other's through their bodily radiance. Their bodies shine with light. So they can see and they communicate with each other. So the highest, in terms of pleasure, is called the heaven of controlling others' emanations. So they have the clairvoyant power to create beautiful emanations. And I don't know, the controlling others' emanations, I've never actually heard what it means by controlling others' emanations. It might be something like the Divas Olympic Games, who can make the best emanation, I don't know. It's something controlling. The next one down, heaven enjoying one's own emanations. So what they do is that they just emanate things. This is their pleasure. There are 4 levels of pleasure. The highest one is just looking, just seeing beauty. And hearing, smelling, touching, tasting. Just simply seeing. In terms of each other, they delight in each other's appearance. In a more coarse going down, there's the pleasure of smiling. Like we see somebody who's very attractive, that's very pleasing to the eye. If they smile at us, it's so much more pleasing. There is this psychological enjoyment. Then if they hold our hands, even more grossly pleasing. So holding hands. And the 4th level, and the most coarse level of enjoyment, is physical embrace, including sexual union. So that is considered coarse and gross. Holding hands, lighter, more refined. Smiling, more refined. And just the appearance, very refined. So it's all still, for these sky-dwelling devas, it's desire for the appearance or the touch of others. When a meditator goes into the first dhyana, or the first concentration, they no longer have desire or attachment, even for pleasant appearances. All the physical world no longer matters. They have desire for the meditative experience of concentration. And that creates a karma to be reborn at the future in that level. Alright? Then there are 2 earth-dwelling heavens, heaven of 33 and the heaven of 4 great lineages. The heaven of 33 refers to the heaven of Indra, the god Indra, who has 33 ministers or 33 assistants or whatever. That's what the 33 refers to. And the heaven of the 4 great royal lineages, or 4 great kings, is called the... in our tradition, we have the... I'm sure that you've read the Golden Light Sutra, where the four kings promise the Buddha to look after Dharma practitioners and to punish those who try to destroy the Dharma or don't practice Dharma. So those are the four great kings. The first, so those two, the heaven of 33 and the heaven of the four great royal lineages, they are devas who occasionally experience conflict with what is written here, the demigods or the asuras. So an asura is a rebirth state. The karma is less than being an earth-dwelling deva, but they have very close communication. Like we have close karmic connection with the animals and birds at our human level. So they have very close karmic connection with the gods of the heaven of four great kings and the heaven of 33. And they're very jealous. They're very martial. They don't have the pleasures of those heavens, but they actually can go to war to fight the gods to try and get their pleasures. They never win. They can be winning, but they never completely overcome the gods. And so there's conflict. That's why the first of the sky-dwelling heavens is called heaven without combat, because there's no combat with the asuras. So asura rebirth is a rebirth state. They have more pleasure than humans, but they have this jealousy of the higher gods and the suffering of always being in conflict. Then the humans, in the Abhidhamma, there's talks about humans in different continents or different, I think, periods of existence, sharing the human experience of animals, but what appears to an animal's mind is not necessarily what appears to a human mind. Hungry ghosts also share our experience, but they have a very different experience. I'm sure you've all heard the illustration that what we humans would see. There's a liquid, and it appears to us as water, and it functions to us as water. This is our human karmic appearance and experience as well. For a hungry ghost, the same liquid appears as a filthy, undrinkable liquid, and it functions as such. And to one of the devas, say the earth-dwelling gods, the same liquid appears and functions as ambrosia, the nectar of the gods, incredibly blissful nectar. Appears and functions according to the individual karma of the hungry ghost, human, or a deva. So, I've already mentioned how subjectively, whether we're elated in attachment of love, or we're depressed, or we're just neutral, that colours our world and our experience of the world. That is one subjective condition. Another subjective condition is the type of karma that's ripening in our mind. In general, we have human karma. So as humans, we relate to things generally in a very similar way. But then specifically, there's different individuals have slightly different, just as humans, different experience. Like there are some people who think that the taste of a durian is magnificent. There are some people, like myself, who think the taste of a durian is absolutely awful. I experimented. Yesterday I had my first ever durian. The rest of it's still in the fridge. So I think, well, it might be karmic, psychological, environmental. There are many conditions which determine any individual's personality and their likes and dislikes, but probably even underneath this karma as well. So that's quite interesting, because scientifically we say that anything that is subjective is necessarily wrong, and we can't believe subjective experience is not a foundation for fact. Fact has to be objectively experienced without any subjective mind interfering. And that's quite reasonable if you think about it. But what about the mind itself? This scientific attitude, we can measure the brain. When somebody is thinking about playing tennis, we can see a particular region of the brain is playing tennis. So they think always, that's the tennis playing region of the brain. And anger, their instruments light up. There's a particular brain region which lights up when someone has emotion of anger. That is anger from the scientific point of view. That other part is love. That's the objective interpretation. That they are seeing mind. And I say in these notes somewhere, these scientists who think they're observing mind, when they see a particular part of the brain light up on their instruments, they are as far from seeing mind as a paleontologist is from seeing a dinosaur when they see the fossilized footprints. These are just the footprints of awareness. The bits of the brain which light up on their objective instruments, that is not mind. Mind can only be experienced subjectively through introspection. And this is where not just Buddhism, but Hinduism, so much Eastern thought, which is aware of meditation and introspection and looking at the mind, is just so far ahead of Western science. Because if we have instruction of what the mind, how it functions, and if we follow those instructions in meditation, we can experience, subjectively, yes, but we experience the good levels, the bad levels, the constructive emotions, destructive emotions of our mind, as it was explained by the teacher, in our case, the Buddha. So the yogi and the yogini's experience verifies what the Buddha said. It's not that the Buddha wrote a book and we say, the mind is such and such because the book says it so. No, it is necessarily, you have to have the subjective experience. And then you know it's true. And each of us, as humans, in our meditation, we can experience the form realm levels, the first concentration, second, third, fourth, and the formless concentrations. We can experience them. That verifies the Buddha's... And it's an easy step after that to think that when we die, if our mind is at that level of concentration, we can be born experiencing that for a long time. Same as if we go to sleep in a particular emotional state, that emotional state very often colours the type of dream that we have. Pleasant dream, unpleasant dream. There is a relationship between our waking experiences and emotions, and our dreaming experiences and emotions. So for sure, when we die and the mind survives death, then it's quite logical. Yes, we can wake up in this intermediate state and even in a new life form where the future mind is influenced by past life experiences. So this necessarily is verified in a subjective manner. You can't do it objectively. You know, instruments which are not mind. The only thing which can truly observe mind is mind itself. Okay. So, animals, hungry ghosts, hell beings. The hells are difficult to accept. I mean, I don't know about your background. My background, no religious background at all. But having grown up in a Christian country, can't help but be influenced by Christian beliefs. But as a very, very, very young child, I heard about heaven and hell, and I rejected very strongly. I rejected a creator God and so on. That was not my sphere of interest. Certainly it wasn't my sphere of learning. And then I met Tibetan Lamas in Nepal, most admirable, amazing people I'd ever met. And then they start talking about heaven and hell. I thought, oh no, this is the same. And even in the Abhidhamma, it says that, yeah, heaven's up there, hell is down there. But the Abhidhamma is necessarily an interpretative teaching. There are teachings the Buddha gave to people who can understand at a certain level, but they're a deeper underlying meaning. So when we hear about the sufferings in hell, it's very difficult initially to accept. And I quote the Shantideva from the Bodhisattva's Way of Life. There are two verses. Who intentionally created all the weapons for those in hell? Who created the burning iron ground? From where did the women in hell ensue? The Mighty One, Buddha, has said that all such things are the workings of an evil mind. Hence, within the three world spheres, desire realm, form realm and formless realm, there is nothing to fear other than my mind. So what Shantideva is referring to here is that one of the regions of a hell experience, beings are spontaneously born and they see other beings and they have instant hatred. And the weapons are coming out of the sky, so they pick up weapons and they just fight and try to kill all those that they see around each other. And oneself is being attacked and wounded, and one can fall mortally wounded to the ground, but instead of dying, there is a voice or a cool breeze will revive one. The voice will say, once again, you're reborn in this reviving hell. And so the wounds are healed, and one instantly sees all these visions of people who one hates, starts fighting, mortally wounded, fall down, revive, and so on. So that's what Shantideva was referring to. Who intentionally created all these weapons for those beings? The weapons are created by the mind. They're not hallucinations. They function just as the liquid functions as blood and pus for a hungry ghost. These weapons created by the mind function, and you are wounded by the weapons in the hands of others. the burning iron ground refers to the hot hells. The ground is supposed to be red, like red hot iron. And where it says the women in hell, where do they come from? So what this is referring to is that one particular, they call it a neighbouring hell, where you may be in a forest, and these trees with sword-like leaves, and you hear the attractive voice, the voice of someone who you feel you recognise, to whom you are attached. And it can be male or female. It's not just female voices, it can be male. So if you have a male aspect in hell, you're attracted by a female voice, or the other way around. And so you just crave to be with that person where the voice is coming from. So you climb the tree and you cut to pieces. You get to the top. There's no person. Just these great big birds, as it's described, with iron beaks, who attack you and peck your brains out. Then you hear the voice from the ground. So you just desire, I must be with that person. So you climb down through the sword-like leaves, you get cut to pieces. You get to the bottom of the tree, no person, but these vicious dogs with spiked collar, and they attack you and bite you. And you hear the voice again, up and down. Incredible, like craving to be with this pleasure, but all of these incredibly disappointments, huge disappointment in not getting what your desire wants, and then the physical pain is involved. So Shanti David, where does it all come from? It comes from one's evil mind. It's like a living nightmare. In dreams, we can have this. We can be, really, there's some attractive thing or person or just something we want to go to in the dream, but we can't get there. I've been in dreams where you're really trying to get somewhere, but you're in sand, and the sand keeps falling away, and you just can't move forward. Have you had that dream? Yeah. The mind does all sorts of things. So these hells are like a dream. They come from the mind. They're not down there. They are, each individual who experiences a hell rebirth experiences his or her personal hell. Their own mind creates it and they live it. It's like paranoid schizophrenia. In my first course, when I heard this description of birds with iron beaks, it's such a weird thing, iron beaks attacking you, that completely blew my mind. Because just months before I went to Nepal for my first ever meeting with Buddhism and the teachings, I was working as a medical officer in a psychiatric hospital. And one of my patients, he was an 18 or 19-year-old young man, and he was having these hallucinations. And this is before I heard anything about Buddhism. And I remember I was here, he was the other side of the table, and there was a window behind him. No, the window was behind me. That's right. And then there was a desk, and he was facing me in the window. And he was telling me that he was terrified because everywhere he went, he was pursued by giant birds with iron beaks who were trying to peck his brains out. Exactly. That's what Lama Zopa described the hell. And so, I was the young doctor. Oh, give me a break. But while he's telling me this, I'm looking at his face, and this horror came over his face. And he looked past me outside the window, and he sort of pointed, there's one of them now. And I tell you, a little shiver went up my spine. I sort of turned around, saw nothing. Maybe a kookaburra or an Australian bird. But he was seeing something which terrified him. 2 weeks later, he committed suicide. So what happened to his mind after that? You know, he'd set up what Buddha described hell is like. So the paranoid hallucinations and delusions, schizophrenia, that's human mind, that's not hell. But it is an illustration of what our human mind can do. And you can easily imagine that when this poor man died, he was still in this terrifying state. The death did not bring an end to the terror. Only the exhaustion of the karma. It would end, but he probably experienced it for a lot longer. Such suffering, such incredible suffering. And we create it. Our own mind is creating it. We have to always aware of this reality. I've quoted something at the bottom of that page from Geshe Jamba Techok. He was the abbot of Nalanda Monastery. I went to France in 1982 to start Nalanda Monastery, the first Tibetan Buddhist monastery in Europe, actually. It's certainly in our tradition. And Geshe Jamba Techok, he came appointed by Lama Yeshe as our abbot. And then when he left, after 6 years, he became the abbot of Serajay Monastery for about 5 or 6 years. So Geshe Jamba Techok, when he was teaching the Lamrim, from his teachings, the sufferings of the hells are not mere hallucinations in that they are not really being experienced. It's not that they are non-existent. If they were mere hallucinated appearances, they could not function as they appear. For example, when a mirage appears to be water, there's no water. It's just a hallucination. That mirage can't function as water. Or when we see the moon reflected on the water, then there's not a moon in the water. It can't function like a moon in the water. It's not like that. But in the hells, he says, we really do experience suffering from the instruments of torture in the hell realms when we've been born there. And we really do experience feelings of pain from the burning hot iron ground. Therefore, these hell experiences, although they come from the mind, they're not mere hallucinations and they're not mistaken appearances. For the individual, they're real. Okay. So, I won't go more into the realms of rebirth unless you want to ask questions about them. I was going in, the next section is Buddhist cosmology, which is really interesting. Any, yeah. Yeah. If we do experience rebirth at all those levels, how do we get out of hells, etc.? Is that the question?
If you have been born in every of this realm, right?
Yeah.
How do we go from the lower to the upper, and how do we drop from the upper to the
Okay.
and then that's part 2 is if you aspire for higher rebirth, but it's just like endless bleed up there, then one day we will drop. Then why bother to go there?
Yeah. Well, good question. How can we create karma in a hell for happy rebirth? Not impossible, but very, very difficult. But if, for example, we're born in the hells, we only experience the suffering for as long as the power of that karma is there. But the experiencing of karma exhausts the karma. And so once the painful karmas have been exhausted, the next strongest karmas ripen. So we have karmic potentials created in previous lives for happy rebirths. Every hell being has unripened positive karmic potentials from when they were human, for example. And so when the negative karma is exhausted, things can only get better. But then if they get become human, they don't realize the good karma that they created to be human, and they still carry the seeds of anger and attachment and ignorance, and we create more negative karma. So we go back down again. It's very difficult. Very occasionally, as humans, we can create the karma to be born in the form and formless realms. So even the highest formless realm, the peak of samsara, that is karmically determined. So when the karma to experience that is finished, that being, in their mind, they still have karmic seeds for lower rebirth. So when they die from that top level of formless realm, they can be born anywhere in the 6 realms. So up and down. So the second part, what's the point of aspiring for higher rebirth? If it's just the pleasure we want, there is no point. The only point to aspire to have a higher rebirth, in particular a human rebirth, which is in the middle, is to continue your practice of Dharma so that you can bring your will of life to an end. You can destroy karma, and you destroy karma by realizing emptiness. So it's a good question. And I was thinking this yesterday because I took a book out of the library yesterday, the Arya Sangata Sutra, which Lama Zopa made me read 500 times. Before I did a 3-year retreat, I had to read the Arya Sangata Sutra 500 times, which was fantastic. So I found it there and I read it yesterday. And the same question came up in my mind where Buddha, in fact, it's about 90 pages, but you don't know where the Arya Sangata Sutra is, because all those 90 pages are talking about the Arya Sangata Sutra. Difficult to know where it starts or ends. But there's so many vivid analogies of the benefits of hearing one verse of the Arya Sangata Sutra. You're reborn in the Deva realms for 20,000 eons and so on. And I remember during those 500 recitations, what's the point? I don't want to be reborn in the Deva realms for 50,000 eons. Because they just come back down again. So anyway, I think the point is that this is the merit. This is a description of the merit from reading the Arya Sangata Sutra or hearing it. It doesn't mean that you've got to go to those rebirths. As one practices Dharma, one's virtuous merit for happy rebirth is transformed into the merit for Buddhahood, for attaining the body and the pure land of Buddhahood. You know that to achieve Buddhahood, you need the 2 great collections of wisdom and of merit, or virtue. So initially, when the mind is still contaminated by self-grasping ignorance, our virtue, it creates the cause for happy rebirth. But when we have genuine renunciation, the lotus upon which the Buddha sits symbolizes the mind of renunciation. Literally, it is translated into English as definite emergence. Renunciation, definite emergence from this very wheel of life. Emergence from these three realms. And what is the mind of renunciation? At the moment, when we generally, I mean me anyway, when we wake up, think, what can I do today to be happy? You know, life has so many opportunities. I can travel, I can see this movie, I can go to that beautiful garden, I can do this, that, enjoy with my friends, and so on. That is samsara. That is belief that life is there to get out and enjoy the human pleasures. That is more important. That is the most important thing about being human. That's the opposite of renunciation. Renunciation is that state of mind which recognizes the folly, the contamination of mundane happiness, and aspires towards nirvana, liberation, and enlightenment. So when you wake up, the thought is, what can I do today to achieve nirvana, to achieve enlightenment for the benefit of others? So it's spontaneous. Prior to that, renunciation is contrived. It's not actual renunciation. Actual renunciation only begins in the mind of single-pointed concentration, Kamapati. At the first dhyana, the mind has that power of concentration. So there is no trace of mundane desire. The whole mind is directed towards liberation and enlightenment. And that is a necessary precursor to bodhicitta, the altruistic intention to achieve Buddhahood. You know, in the teachings of bodhicitta, there's contrived or fabricated bodhicitta, where you meditate on suffering, and you generate incredible compassion. And in your meditation, how wonderful if I could release beings from suffering. But as soon as you stop meditating, that fades. So we call that, and that's a very virtuous meditation. It's called contrived bodhicitta. It's not actual bodhicitta. Actual bodhicitta is when the mind, even when you're out of meditation, is spontaneously aims to achieve Buddhahood, to guide all beings out of suffering. So you see, bodhicitta necessarily comes after pure renunciation. And renunciation also has those contrived aspects, good, but not true renunciation. And then when it is spontaneous, that's actual renunciation. That is the lotus upon which the Buddha sits. Bodhicitta is the moon, and the wisdom realizing emptiness is the sun. That also, and that depends upon renunciation and bodhicitta, the direct realization. Okay. So again, you can see how even Buddhahood depends upon the mind. Yeah.
I can backtrack a little bit about the Samgata Sutra, right? How does it work that reading, just by merely reading or chanting the Samgata Sutra, you purify the bad karma and create lots of good? How does that work?
How does the great benefit happen? Just by hearing the word Arya Sutra. I don't know. But I believe it. Many people ask Lama Zopa to give a name for their pet dog or cat. And there are countless dogs and cats amongst Lama Zopa's students, and they're all named Bodhicitta or Shunyata. Just the word bodhicitta creates an imprint on the mind, a connection. Amazing. Yeah, I mean, exactly what's going on, I don't know. But there's something very special. The holy objects, you know, even to a mosquito who comes in here and they have eyes, they see Chenrezig, they receive an imprint to achieve Buddhahood. That's the story of the fly on the piece of dung that floated around the stupa. This shows you how fortunate we are to meet the Lamas. Like all the holy images here, they're not decorations. Each one strongly encouraged by Kyabche Lama Zopa Rinpoche to be made. The Buddha, the whole entrance is for the people in the street. It creates an incredible impression, a connection in their mind with the Dhamma. I don't know, look, I told you I had no religious background at all, scientific, rejecting religion. But when I went to London way back, 1970, because I'd worked for a year in hospitals in New Guinea. I really loved tropical medicine, incredibly exciting experience working in the tropics, and the types of illnesses and the people was so different from Melbourne, where I grew up. And so I remember talking to another doctor who mentioned this course, the postgrad course in tropical medicine and hygiene at London University. And I thought, yes. So I went to England. I got a job as a ship's doctor, which was very good. A free passage. My girlfriend, her father was high up in shipping. And so ships would do that. They would take a doctor for nothing. And you nominally the ship's doctor, but this was a cargo ship, but it wasn't passengers. Anyway, I had a free passage to England. And I was studying tropical medicine. And the School of Tropical Medicine is in the middle of London. And outside the front door and just up a little bit along the same road was the rear entrance of the British Museum. And so this was a 6-month course, and I'd take sandwiches or get lunch at a restaurant, and then I'd go into the British Museum in the rear door. And I had 6 months of lunch times to explore. But the first room was called the Asian Room. And in that room were the most incredible Buddha images carved from granite, huge granite, stolen by the British colonialists from Asia and stuck into this room. But I used to go into that room and just look at the Buddha images, and they were impressive. And I had no connection at all. But I still remember being impressed. Impressed by the artist who carved this giant block of granite into such a powerful image. And I made friends with a Swedish doctor who was also a student at the School of Tropical Medicine. And he called himself a Buddhist Christian. So he was trying to talk me into Buddhism. And I was trying to talk him into trying LSD, which is where I came from. Anyway, I didn't succeed, but he did spark interest in Eastern philosophy. And I think that those Buddha images functioned on my mind. They really established a sense of wonder. What is Buddhism about? I don't know. That's Aryasagata Sutra. I highly recommend you read that too. 500 times if you can. When love was over, told me to do that, I was nearly going to debate. I said, remember, it takes 3 hours to read it once. But I thought, no. You don't debate. You do it. It took me a long while. Okay. What time have we got? You see the graph that I made in the notes? We won't have time today, but tomorrow definitely we will talk about the Buddhist cosmology and this graph that I created over several years. Just to introduce the cosmology, Buddha mentioned that throughout the universe there are countless, I think the word is countless, world systems. Now, world system is just an English translation of the Sanskrit. Can't even remember what the Sanskrit is. But it says that a world system comprises 1 billion solar systems, 1 billion worlds, like our solar sun and Earth and so on. Which is interesting because the book that I'm reading about quantum physics says that every galaxy has 1 billion suns. 1 billion suns and billions of planets. So at least there's one thing in common, 1 billion suns. So maybe a world system refers to a galaxy such as the Milky Way. And there are uncountable galaxies from Buddhist point of view throughout the universe. So these world systems, they come into existence and they go out of existence. I think it's easier to think of a solar system coming into existence and out of existence. But let's say we're talking about a solar system. So there are 4 periods of time, and these follow one after the other. So the prior, scientifically I think also we accept this, that before the sun appeared as a star, there was a cloud of gas. Right? We agree it was hydrogen. Buddha said, during the period of emptiness, which is the period between the end of one world system and the next, there is just space filled with gas. It doesn't say, literally, His Holiness Dalai Lama talks about space particles, which is the smallest part of matter, smaller than atoms, smaller than atomic particles. So it's just there. And it's an incredibly long period of time. Now in that region of, so there are sentient beings, but there's no desire realm, there's no environment for desire realm. All the sentient beings are abiding in the second form realm and above. So that's the second concentration, third, fourth, and then the 4 formless realms. So that's where the sentient beings are. There's no gross form. They don't have gross bodies. They have very subtle bodies. In the formless realm, extremely subtle bodies. But that's where the sentient beings are, many. So where do those sentient beings come from? They were born there at the end of the previous world system, which exploded, and all the gross suns, planets, etc. disappeared. There was just this dust or space particles. Then, after such a very long time, this is called the period of emptiness, their karma, those beings, those sentient beings in the second, third, fourth, and the form realm and four formless realms, their karma expired. And so they began to be reborn lower and down into the first form realm, the realm of Brahma. That's the first dhyana, or the first form concentration, which is very interesting. Because the Hindu belief is that we are all emanations of Brahma, the god Brahma, who abides at the first form realm concentration. So, Buddha taught that this period of emptiness, all the space particles, the sign that it is coming to an end is that a cool wind, begins to stir the space particles. And then, so that's the end of the period of emptiness, and you enter the second period, the period of formation. These periods of equal duration, very, very, very long. In the period of formation, gradually the sentient beings in that region of the universe, their karma is degenerating. They begin to, as they die, create karma to reborn in the desire realm. Not create karma, to ripen karma. The karma was already created in their minds. So the two ways it says to happen. One explanation is at first the hottest hell, the worst hells, the environments of the first hells, and then the lighter hells and the hungry ghosts, animals, humans, and desire realm devas, the environments are gradually created. That's one way it's explained. Another way it's explained is just from the top down, that the desire realm devas environments appear, and then the desire realm asuras, then the humans, animals, as it going down. To me, it sounds, I like the bottom-up description. So during the formation, an incredibly long period of time, gradually the environments of the desire realm come into existence. So you get the appearances of stars and planets, solar systems, and so on, are all appearing. And as these cool down, etc., the sentient beings appear in different forms, up right through that period of creation, development. At the end of that period, all environments are there, the desire realm, the form realm, and the formless realm. So, at the end of that period, there's the third period, the period of existence. Again, equal length, equal duration to the period of emptiness, creation or development, and existence. Equal length. So during that period, that's when things will happen. We'll talk about that tomorrow morning. When that period ends, then the rebirth, the sentient beings in that region of the universe, karma to reborn in hells is stopping. The ripening of karma is not happening. They're becoming more virtuous, and so they're being reborn higher and higher up the desire realm and in the form and formless realms. So the period of destruction begins when there are no longer any hell rebirths happening in this particular corner of the universe. If some sentient beings are dying and ripening karma to be born in hells, they will be reborn in another galaxy or another solar system, not sure, where hell rebirth is still happening. You see, they're in different phase. The different solar systems are not all the same. They're different phase. So the hell realms cease in this particular region. This is the period of destruction. Hell realms stop. Hungry ghost rebirth stops. Animal, human, all those rebirths stop. And the beings are mostly being reborn higher and higher into the desire realm gods, and then high into the form realm gods, realm of Brahma, and then above that. And so the end of that period of destruction, it says, which science agrees, that the sun will expand and explode and consume the earth. So the physical environments for desire realm rebirth will also stop, because the karma is stopping in this region of the universe. And so, at the end, all of the sentient beings will be at the level of the second form realm and above. So that's the beginning of the next period of emptiness. And that go for the same amount of time, and then collective karma will change. And it'll happen. So this has been happening since, for us, for our mind streams, since time without beginning. The interesting point about the realm of Brahma, where the Hindu belief is in, they also present the desire, form and formless realms. They say we all come from Brahma. And it's like that. Like when you remember, during the period of emptiness, everybody's in the second form realm and above, but then the karma begins to ripen for rebirth lower, so they get reborn in the realm of Brahma, and then the whole desire realm. So it's like we do come from Brahma, in a way. We were Brahma, but we don't. And the Hindu belief is that the spiritual path is to reunite with Brahma. Well, in a way we do that too, but there's more to it. It's just a rebirth state, and we even go higher. So anyway, that's just an interesting point. Buddha, when he, as Prince Siddhartha, he was already enlightened, but he manifested or demonstrated leaving the palace and all the pleasures, renunciation, which was just a teaching because he was already a Buddha. So he studied with all the great teachers in the land and learnt all that they had to teach. And it wasn't all wrong. It was karma, it was rebirth. There was so much correct. But what he said, what you haven't taught me is the real cause of suffering. So he demonstrated meditation by the banks of the Narayana river, which I meditated beside, at the place where Buddha did 6 years of meditation. I was only there for 3 months. He got enlightenment, I got hepatitis. Because I swam in the river, which I shouldn't have. So he taught emptiness. So this is what I have not learned. The real cause of suffering is grasping at inherent existence. And so much of the other information was valid that he'd learned. So we don't reject and just accept it. If it's not Buddhism, it's not right. It's not true. So I had no religious background, but after I decided to become a monk, I went to see my old biology teacher from high school. She was my favorite teacher. And I didn't know, well, she was a spinster living, but she was sharing a house with my old maths teacher. So the biology teacher was my favorite, and my maths teacher was my least favorite teacher. Anyway, they're lovely, lovely old ladies. And we had a cup of tea, and I told them, I mean, I hadn't seen them since I left high school, so I'm a doctor, they were very happy about that. But I'm going to become a Buddhist monk. Oh. Anyway, they gave me their Bible as I was saying goodbye, which I carried for about 6 or 7 years, never looked at. I'd never read the Bible. But when I went to France to start in a Lama monastery, I had this Bible, I thought I'll read it. And I read it twice, completely. And I was astounded. First of all, by realizing how much I was culturally influenced by Judaism and Christianity. I didn't realize the depth to which my culture is influenced by Christianity. And that was interesting. I wasn't upset about it. But then as I read the stories, I thought there was so much in common about Buddhism. See, I was now a Buddhist, I was a monk. And it struck, I just thought that, well, if this God created the world, like we're just talking about creation of the world, we create the world. I said, God created the world. But what is God? God is wisdom and compassion. But God rewards and punishes. Well, what actually created the world is karma, the actions of sentient beings. And suffering is created by ignorance. Happiness is created by virtue. And so I thought, wow, if I just replace the word God with karma, you've virtually got Buddhism in the Bible. Anyway, a bit heretical, I don't know. This is just my experience. But we're talking about creation, and I don't think we can reject the Hindu idea of creation or the Judeo-Christian, Islamic view of creation. If we look into it, there is a common thread and a recognizable thread of reality. Sure, requires a bit of interpretation, but that's okay. Anyway, enough. Thank you so much for your attention. I hope I haven't bored you or turned you off or annoyed you. Tomorrow we will continue and on this subject, and we should dedicate the positive energy of our discussion today. Think that may I deeply come to understand what Lord Buddha taught, not just for my own sake, but in order to grow up, to become mature, to reach my potential of Buddhahood, so that I can really fulfill my responsibility to mother, father, husband, wife, children, my fellow sentient beings, humans, animal, the whole lot. May I lead them out of suffering by revealing to them the wisdom as shown to me by my teachers, who are the agents of Lord Buddha. Thank you very much.